Need a second?
I wasn't here, but I'll second.
Second, Ms. Anderson. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We have a employee recognition, but the individual is not here this morning, so we will do that next month, maybe?
Sure.
Okay. Or you can just take it to him. We'll just have delivered to him. Agenda item number 4, the consent agenda. Anybody have anything on the consent agenda they'd like to pull? Being not, I'll entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda.
Motion to accept consent agenda, items 5 through 9.
Motion, Mr. Nelson.
Mike seconded.
Second, Mr. Myers. Further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Agenda item number 10, our lawsuit. Did you turn that over to council or to?
Well, I can certainly add some. To date, we have, as agenda items suggest, we have supplied information from both counsel's office and the OUA files to Marcel Berg, Mr. Melville, who is representing the OUA. He has reviewed those documents and responded to the original complaint, providing affirmative or whatever answers were responsible for the complaint. He has since supplied to them a request for information.
Discovery.
And we're awaiting those answers from Land Trust Services Corporation. Once that happens, I think we'll have another meeting to discuss where we go from there. So where the lawsuit will move. There is, let's see, I'll just add anything to that.
I like the way you're struggling with that. That's good.
Well, it is, I didn't want to get into any too much.
No, you don't have to. In legalese, he's filed an answer to the complaint. He's filed affirmative defenses on our behalf. And he's also sent out interrogatories and a request for copies of documents, which is called discovery. We really don't know what they want. We're still trying to find that out, and maybe there's grounds to settle this and get it over with. We just don't know right this minute. Still a little too early to tell. We furnished all the information that we had from all of our files to our attorney so that he could file a response and the answer. It's just sitting there right now. We're waiting on the defendant to respond. That's all I can tell you.
Any questions for John or council? I do see here we have a request for revised purchase order.
Yes, if the board would consider that. We initially, just a starting point, had issued a purchase order for $5,000 to start the process of being able to pay the invoices. As you can see, we're now up close to $8,000 on invoices. Staff is just requesting that if we could increase that PO to $15,000, that we could continue to pay the invoices that are certainly present, as well as probably the next set of invoices once the responses for the request for information come back in and they review it and then take staff to discuss the options.
It's the board's pleasure.
You feel comfortable?
Yes.
Okay. I make a motion that we advance the funds in the amount of $15,000 to pay current and future invoices from Bosellenberg LLC.
Motion by Mr. Nelson to increase to $15,000.
Seconded.
Second by Ms. Anderson. Further discussion? Being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Hayford, while we have you, agenda item 11, water main extension, Northwest 28th Avenue, Bastrop.
Sorry about the speed on this one, but they come into the office relatively quickly and requested the two houses at the southern end of, the southern end of, near the southern end of 28th Avenue, have requested service. A cost was given to them, just shy of $2,600 for the extension, of which they agreed to pay. The process that staff looks at, though, is looking at all customers, both in that area in the future, and fire protection, which would require that main to be upsized from 130 feet to 6 inch to set a hydrant that would be able to serve all the way to the south end of Northwest 28th Avenue as it currently exists. The cost to do that work, both the 6 inch water main and the 2 inch water main, is around $50,500. We're somewhat in a dilemma here in that the two previous line extensions on this road, the homeowners agreed to pay the 2 inch cost, and then the OUA picked up the remaining cost to put in a 6 inch. On Northwest 37th Avenue, which was done at a later date, the board established, or at least in that instance, that they would pay the entire cost. From a staff perspective, I would like to know, A, can we move forward with this project, and B, do we split the cost again between the residents and the OUA, or do we pay the entire amount?
We paid the last, 34th, we paid the full
On Northwest 37th Avenue, the OUA picked up all construction costs.
construction cost. And that's expected to cost $15,500?
Yes, sir.
Is the total cost?
At any rate, from a staff perspective, we would certainly agree with this new water main, the 6 inch and the 2 inch. It's just really more of a procedural question of the financing.
We've got a potential of gaining 8 more connections down there. That these lots look vacant at this.
Those would be the vacant lots plus one lot that is existing. That we would reach out to those folks to see if they wanted to have a meter. And again, if the OUA is paying the cost, then it's just a connection fee. If we split the cost, then we'd have to talk to them about paying their prorated share of the 2 inch.
John, remind me why we paid the full thing on the 37th Avenue, please?
I believe the thought process there was, since it was such a long water main, it was many hundreds of feet, that it was deemed to be more of like a developer project, like a developer coming in and putting it in, of which the developer would have paid the entire fee, and that's why the OUA at that time said if we're going to be, I don't know how many customers, I don't recall, it was 4 or 5, maybe 6 customers that we picked up, it was treated more as a development project, so it was more in tune with the OUA paying the full fees on that one, and they just, the new connection, service connections paid the normal connection charges. Again, it's sort of like if somebody were somewhere else out in the system and there was an existing water main in front of their house, they're just asked to pay the connection cost, not the installation of that main. So I think the way the thinking was, rather than considering this a developer extension, the folks on 37th Avenue were treated like somebody on Southwest 5th Avenue wanting to put in a service connection on an existing water main. And so I think those were the two thought processes that we went through on Northwest 37th Avenue, why the board elected to pay the entire cost.
Well, thinking along those lines, we don't have that distance to cover with this request, do we?
No. there may be, with the vacant lots, there may be future connections, then they would end up just paying the standard connection fees and nothing towards the 2-inch water main.
So technically, if we go with it, paying a portion of this, we're only actually at this point getting 2 parcels? Is that correct?
We know we're going to get the 2 on the end. There is one existing home that's right over the avenue, AVE, that does not have a water main in front of it, and I would reach out to those residents to see if they want to connect. So we could get 3 more.
Okay.
Whatever decision we make, we're making policy here for future.
Well,
That's right.
from a staff perspective, if we were only extending it 1 lot to 1 house, it's very easy to say, okay, you have to pay for the water main extension because we're only gaining that lot in that service connection. What makes this a little bit more difficult when you're going by other either existing homes or vacant lots, how do you prorate the share of that 2-inch water main at some later date, 6 months, 8 months down the year, with some other residents paid for? And it just becomes a little more problematic.
Northwest 28th Avenue, at some point, or would we be extending that?
I don't know of any provision right now, and I think it butts up against the airport property, so
Okay.
it's not likely that would happen.
Okay.
Is there any plans to loop those lines at any point, once it's fully installed?
There may be if at the far end, but by lowering it to a 2-inch line, and if there's 5 or 6 houses on it, the issue from looping it is not as great as if we ran 6-inch down there and we had from a system reliability issue, then it would be positive to be able to loop it at the south end if we get that provision to be on the adjacent property, not cutting across the resident's property.
So the only thing we're extending then is the 2-inch, not the 6-inch.
We would extend, if we're to do this, if the only way was to do the project, the first 130 feet would be 6-inch water main, and we'd set a fire hydrant at that point, which would be within the 500 feet to the terminal end on the south, which would meet our current design standards for fire protection. And then the rest of it would be 2-inch water main.
And that would be for home services.
Yes, sir.
Okay, well, explained a lot to me. Oh, boy, okay. Any further discussion? Anybody got any other ideas? Wow. Well, the 6 inches are our burden for the water, for the fire hydrant, right? That would be, we'd absorb that cost for that. Now, the 15.5 would just be the 2-inch, or does that include the 6-inch for the 130
That
feet?
includes 130 feet of 6-inch pipe and a fire hydrant, and then about 500 feet of 2-inch, which would go 1 lot past those 2 southern homes. So that if any of those 4 lots down there on the south end, which is the right side of the picture, when they develop, our water main is already in, and we're not coming back for a 4th base road to extend the water main.
Gotcha.
So by spending the $15,500, essentially this segment or portion of Northwest 28th Avenue will have water service available from 36th Street south to the terminal end.
I guess what my thought process is, are we setting a precedent if we go in and pay for this ourselves, like we did developer idealism or not? Somewhere down the road, if we did that, we're going to come up against something that we're not going to like, I think. So I feel personally like that especially since these two customers have offered to pay for their, that 2-inch portion, that's what I would prefer to go with. That's my feeling.
And if we get the one other house to sign up, then we could, like, of course, prorate their share of that 2-inch water main cost between 3 parcels rather than 2.
Further discussion? I tend to agree with Melanie, that down the road, this is going to be problematic for the OUA. I'd like to nip that in the bud right now. And I agree, if these two customers are interested in splitting the cost for their part right now, that would be the way I would lean, and we would pick up the cost for the 6-inch. That's just
Well,
my
that would go, yes, sir, that's exactly, and the additional 2-inch that goes past their preference. So ultimately, under that scenario, they would end up splitting the $2,600 cost. The OUA cost would be the $15,500, but it would be made up in part by the $2,600 paid by those two customers.
And that could be 3 customers, okay.
So ultimately, it'd be just under $13,000 would be the net cost.
And that'd give us fire protection in the area then.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Decision time. Steve, you have any input on that?
No, I mean, I agree with what's being said, because in the future, what will happen is that, unfortunately, we'll have to shoulder all of the expenses, and it's going to catch up to us. I mean, as long as these individuals are willing to pay, to divide that amount of money amongst them, and then the OUA pays the balance, and then when the other lots sell, they come on board and pay their fair share. So I can put that in a motion if you like.
Derek, you have any input on this?
If I could add one thing, the other homeowners to the north, they paid their share of the 2-inch that would be their property. To allocate that 2-inch cost to all future properties may be somewhat problematic, trying to determine. But if these 2 or 3 want to do it, that's where we would share the cost of the construction and the OUA would pick up everything for them.
Derek, you have any input on that? No. Michael?
I don't know how you're going to share the cost between 3 people when there's multiple lots that it would feed. Why wouldn't you designate that for all the lots that it could possibly feed, so that these 3 people aren't taking the burden for all the extra lots?
Better yet, what's the connection cost for those other lots? If someone decided to come in here and build on one of those empty lots, what's it going to cost them to get onto that main?
You mean the normal connection fees?
Yeah.
That would be, I think the meter cost is, to install a meter today, based upon the reduced rates, is $212. The water capital connection charge is $378. And then there is an AGRC fee that changes every month, but that could be in the range of $300 to $400.
So those lots are getting in for less than $1,000, and other guys are having to pay over $1,000.
So based upon today, figuring the water meter installation as well as the capital connection charge and the AGRC, it's around $735. It will go up slightly every month because the AGRC goes up.
So you're thinking about dividing it by 8 and that'd be the number?
That would be my suggestion. I
And
mean,
then
I know we're betting on something that's not there, but
Yeah. And we pick up the difference until that's sold, when your children and my grandchildren. That's fine.
Send your thought process.
How would you be, administratively, the only way you'd be able to keep up with that is to file a lien against the property.
Yeah.
I mean, to know 4 years down the road, you know, that there was this outstanding balance on that one parcel, would administratively be kind of hard to keep up with.
I understand that.
And, you know, we've toyed with the idea that, let's say, this vacant property in between these two houses, that the way I suggested it to the homeowners in the past was that if somebody comes in during the year, the next calendar year, 12-month period, we would look at prorating the share, because that's where our warranty period expires. So there was a sunset, if you will, on the cost of tying in if you're in one of those lots in between where they put the 2-inch. But it was for a year. After that, it was then just going to revert back to the normal connection fees, rates, and charges that are in place at the time that they would assign it for service.
So what they're paying for is the pipe extension, because they're going to pay the connection charge too, just like anybody else coming into the vacant lots or whatever.
That is correct. So in other words, you know, just trying to keep, you know, the two options that we looked at here would be that the OUA paid the entire construction cost, or these two homeowners with the possible third sharing the burden of the cost of the $2,600 2-inch line extension, and then the OUA picking up the 6-inch upsizing plus the additional 2-inch to go one lot further, so that this project is done and we're not in there tearing stuff up for a third time.
Harry, you look in deep thought. What do you?
We'll get more customers sooner if we go ahead and pay the fees and then just pick up more roads more streets as, you know, as we go along. We have an extra $25,000 or something. However, you know, it take years for those new customers to pay the construction costs. You know, I mean, if we pay for it all ourselves at this point, we definitely are setting a precedent that although the cost at this point isn't very high, in another area, it could
be very high.
It could be very high, so.
Well, it is for sake of the discussion, you know, the area to the east of this, Whispering Pines, we're in the middle of a CDBG project where those grant monies are being applied towards the construction of a water main. But the OUA has the understanding that we will also have to put in some money to make up the difference for the construction. And in that project, we're not applying any kind of fees to any of those construction, to any of those properties that we can do. So I mean, it's on orders of magnitude, it's kind of a different project, but in some instances, the OUA, either through grant money or outright revenue, pay for the capital cost. And so this is just on a much smaller scale, you know, $15,000. How do we want to approach it from a procedural or policy standpoint? And again, if it was one line, one extension, we had no problem charging the landowner saying it's going to be, whatever, $600 to extend the water main to your property, and we get the benefit of one customer. It's very straightforward. That's your dime. But when we go by multiple properties to get to those people requesting, therein lies a little bit of a difference in our approach financially to this project.
So what is staff recommendation then?
From this point forward, we're perfectly content with, you know, the 2-inch cost going to those people wanting the extension because they want the service and they're ready, willing, and able to have it put in today. But we don't go back to the 37th and then not know what to do. So we would prefer that the 2-inch extension in this case, just because it is going to serve 2 properties, that's certainly a cost to be borne by those people requesting the service.
Are these or potential customers in agreement of
Yes.
splitting the 20? They are.
Yes.
And that says a lot to me, that.
So it might be on a case-by-case basis, but what I would prefer not to see is to get it more that we have to prorate this cost for some years forward and try to collect fees from the vacant properties when they develop. That might be somewhat problematic administratively.
Yeah, this looks like it's going to, from here on out, it's going to be a case by case, no matter what we do. So setting a policy could be very detrimental at this time. So I think we just have to view it as a case by case. And we've got one here right now that the 2 customers are willing to split the cost to get the 2-inch to them. We'll take the 6-inch for the fire protection where we need to go. And
Well, clearly what they would see the benefit of, like during the last hurricane, when they lost power, they didn't have water because unless they had a generator, their pumps. And easily anybody that has a water system with any kind of treatment behind it, they have recurring monthly cost every month for salt or peroxide or the upkeep of the system. So they recognize, just like anybody else, when they sign up for service in the OUA, the cost associated with it, it's tied to the property benefits from having that service there.
There's also a credit for a fire protection too on homeowner's insurance.
That's kind of a hit and miss, Harry. On some instances, the insurance company tells us it's not, but we've been approached by some folks at Taylor Creek Isles that recognize that their insurance went way up because there are no fire hydrants.
That's correct.
And so we are going to try a process there on a 3-inch water main to be able to install a specialized fire hydrant to see if they can at least get some means of fire protection, but it will not meet the minimum design standards that requires a 6-inch water main to be there. And we're going to try that here in the near term to see what kind of flow rate we can actually get out of those water mains to see if it would be beneficial to the fire protection needs. But yes, the answer to your question, some insurance companies, it is a drastic savings to have that fire hydrant in the area.
And isn't it true that we just increased this property value by having infrastructure available to these people?
I would suggest to you that that's true, that the property values do increase with water and wastewater services provided to it.
All right, it's a pleasure.
Let's not all jump up at once.
Well, if the 2 property owners are willing to pay their fair share, then let's have them pay the fair share, and then we pick up the balance. And then when those other properties start to sell, we prorate whatever those costs are. Because the $15,000 eventually is going to be thrown on all the other ratepayers in the system, which is not fair. Okay? Because on many occasions, Mr. Irby would bring things up about ratepayers, et cetera. So somehow we're going to have to figure out a way to track the empty lots, the vacant lots, so that when they start to sell, those people will pay their fair prorated share of what it cost us in that area,
For what time period?
for as long as it may be. I mean, it sounds crazy, but, I mean, I don't think there's any other way to go about it. I mean, you can balance it out in several different equations with, okay, so we're providing water to that area for future use, okay? But is it fair for everybody else to be paying for something that they don't benefit from?
Well, I would suggest to you that by having the customers on board and paying a monthly fee, a part of which that base charge does go towards debt retirement, they are benefiting the system by having customers come on board, because a portion of their base charge does go towards existing debt service. So there is a benefit with getting more customers on board, whether they're water customers or wastewater customers. I would also suggest that in this area, because it's a long water main going down 36th Street that was put in primarily to serve the school on Mitchell Road, that from an operation maintenance standpoint, we are better off having more customers on that water main utilizing it. So I'm just suggesting to you that by having more customers, there are benefits to the system.
Oh, there's no question about it. So you just answered the question then, is that we bite the bullet and we pay the $15,500.
That would certainly be my suggestion, because it's not much different than, again, somebody on Southwest Fifth Avenue who is not paying for the water main that was put in 30 years ago. They just pay the connection fees and become a customer. So that's why I asked the question of how long you want to do the prorating.
Right.
It's important to our system that way. That how do we do that? And it's not just 28,000. I was looking at the system. How do we do that? And so it's, just the suggestion would be that it is a cost, but it's not much different than other areas that we tie into.
This is just a debt that the only way we'll be able to recover it is over the debt recovery system over years and years and years. Then that's set in place that it would eventually take care of the debt, correct?
It's not really a debt per se, because every year we establish a certain amount of money in the budget for either renewal or replacement of water mains or new water main expansions. I've got the budget, I can look it up, but I think, do you recall off the top of your head? It's a couple $100,000 that we put in the budget every year for water main extensions, because we know we do need to grow the system when there are requests made. So there are monies in the budget that are earmarked specifically for this. So I would just suggest to you it's not really a debt, it's more of an expense that we would incur, and it would become a capital expense that we would have on the books in our system, of which I'm told about all the time about, how much our system is worth. So it just gets added to that figure.
I'm almost afraid to open this chapter in can of worms, but we just went through a deal with one of the title agencies here, and there is obviously a lien process that we have that we don't have to keep changing the lien. It's automatic lien. This system, these 8 properties, couldn't have that put on there, and the landowner or at a sale, they would be responsible for this? I'm just asking a question. I hate to do
I would defer that to council, but I think the lien that you're referring to is our monthly charges for services, and I don't know how a construction or mechanics lien, I think that would have to be something that we would have to specifically file against the property on an annual basis. Is that correct, Tom?
It's a multi-headed question. There are 2 ways to do it. One is for services. That implies that the facilities are already there and services are being furnished to an owner. The other way is a special assessment. Special assessments is paid, an owner pays for improvements based on the increase in value to the property. Those are the only 2 ways I know that can be done. If I add a rhetorical question on this to Steve on benefits from the improvements, what do you do about residences that are already on there when you upgrade? You already got 1 and 2 there. So are you going to come back and reassess them for additional?
It's a catch-22.
Do that, but here, where the owners are offering to pay for the 2-inch extension, That's a reasonable way, I think, to go on this, and if we're gonna go on and do the hydrant and the 6-inch increase, then legitimately, that's a cost for the OUA.
I get where you're coming from, I do, but there's just certain times we can't recover right immediately. It might take years.
Oh, no. I mean, I gave you, the first perspective I gave was the fact that we allow those entities to pay their fair share, and we pick up the balance. And then I gave another side, another view. I mean, there's several ways to look at this. We've always discussed that we want it to be fair to the people on the system, and that the more people, it's like DirecTV. Give them a free dish, sign them up, and you make the money off of the programs that you sell. In this instance, you provide the water mains, et cetera. You've got the entities that want to pay for it, allow them to pay for it, and we pick up the balance. And that's the end of it. Plain and simple. We take each case on an individual case by case, and if it has to be a special exception, whatever it may be, then so be it. That's how we have to look at it, case by case. Each one is going to be different.
It's easier where the customer requesting is willing to pay.
Right.
Much easier.
Yeah. And if that's the case, I mean, then I think it's very simple that we go ahead and allow those entities that like to pay their fair share, have them pay the fair share, and then we pick up the difference with respect of the balance of the 2-inch and the 6-inch main.
Would you like to put that in the form of a motion?
I make that as a motion.
Okay, what is your?
Motion is
your
that those
amended motion?
individual parties that are willing right now to pay their fair share to hook up, okay, and pay for that section of pipe, go ahead and pay for it, and the OUA pays the balance.
Okay.
So to clarify, that was at $2,600.
Yes, sir.
The 26, and we pick up the balance.
Balance.
Motion by Mr. Nelson.
Mike seconded.
Mike seconded.
I did.
Mr. Meyer second. Further discussion?
Would there be, you talked about if someone else hooked up within a year, that they would receive a prorated bill share or something?
That was an attempt that, or was certainly discussed in the past. It's never been put into practice.
Oh, I see.
That's
But
our
what we
warranty.
would do at the onset of this construction, this third house that doesn't have water service, I will approach them to see if they're ready to connect, and if they are, I would adjust the $2,600 between the three.
What if they're not ready to connect now, but
Then
they are?
we just go by their house
If
and they'll have to
they're ready
pay.
next month?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
It is an issue, and I don't really have an answer for that as far as what would happen if they came in 3 months down the road and wanted to connect.
That was all I had.
Additional discussion? All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. That way we have a second house. We're doing it case by case.
There you go.
Agenda item number 12, facility and equipment agreements.
Just informational purposes only, the agreements have been signed and agreed upon.
We're back. Good deal.
Well, certainly we're back
So nice.
for this calendar, this year, with the understanding that in the May, June timeframe, we may have other direction that we may end up going.
All right. Agenda item number 13, Pine Ridge Park wastewater improvement.
Again, provided for informational purposes at this time, just to keep the board appraised of where we are with the project. No, it is not complete, but yes, we have taken beneficial use of the pump station, and as of 10 days or so ago, the Pine Ridge Park wastewater treatment plant is offline, and we're pursuing cleaning that treatment plant out and disinfecting it and making sure that the perimeter fencing is up and serviceable, And at some point in time, probably by the next board meeting, we will be able to convey that property back to the previous owner. And we will have no maintenance or operation of that facility. That would resort back to the Gadsden family. We are trying to close out this project. The contractor is very close. There is going to be a time element where they're going to be requesting time for delays due to Hurricane Irma, both directly, like with stormwater, rainwater, and SPL supplying power to the facility. They were delayed by damages in the system of getting the new power. So the contractor will be filing a claim for time due to Hurricane Irma. That is going to be a part of the final pay request, which will be really more of a reconciliation pay request, where they adjust for time and adjust the final pay application. So other than that, I can't tell you any more. Finance cost. I'll try to answer questions.
Any questions on Pine Ridge Park? No? Moving on, public comment. Hey. Any public comment? Twice? 3 times? Moving on, items from Mr. Khan.
I don't know that there's anything more that I can tell you unless you have questions of me.
Agenda item number 16.
Mostly to provide it for informational purposes only. I will tell you, bullet item number 1 has since changed. Since this was sent out on Thursday, the auctioneer did reach out to me over the weekend. It is scheduled to meet with us this afternoon to go over his proposal, timeline, and any contract. So he actually is going to be meeting with us this morning at 10 o'clock. So bullet item number 1 has changed. Other than that, I guess the appraisals were delivered also. And we're continuing with bullet items 3 and 4.
Any questions for Joan? Any items from the board? Everybody's happy? Good New Year?
So far.
Fantastic. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn.
Seconded.
Mr. Nelson, second, Ms. Anderson. All in favor?
Aye.
Have a good month. See you next month, folks. Thank you.
Okay.